Time is money, and you're wasting both. Sally, a waitress at the roadside diner, faced a tough decision when an elderly woman approached her looking worried. Sally decided to help her, but after her act of kindness, she ended up facing the wrath of the manager, until an unexpected turn changed everything. The unmistakable sound of the heavy, slightly rusty door creaking open signaled the beginning of yet another business day at the iconic roadside diner, an institution that had been serving weary travelers on that stretch of highway for decades. Among the shelves, filled with snacks, necessities, and trucker trinkets, Sally moved with the easy grace of someone who'd been a waitress for years, not months. Despite the relatively short time, she had already won the hearts of the regulars, predominantly truckers like Tom with his bad jokes, Bill with his stories about his grandkids, and countless others who found a bit of company on the road at her tables. Mr. Peters, the diner's owner, was a gruff man with hands like sandpaper, but there wasn't a kinder soul under that faded baseball cap. He'd built the place from a pie stand decades back, and the walls were practically lined with photos of regulars turned friends. Lately, though, there was a tightness around his mouth, worry lines creasing his weathered face. That morning, Mr. Peters gathered the diner staff. He had an important announcement to make, and he wasn't alone. Standing beside him was a young man with a proud posture and a challenging gaze. "Hello all. This won't take long," Mr. Peters began, his voice resonating with the wisdom of years of experience. "I have been delaying my retirement from the diner for a long time. The time has come to pass the baton on." The employees exchanged surprised looks, unsure what to expect from the new boss. "As of today," he continued, with a smile mixed with a hint of nostalgia, "my nephew, Mark, will take over the management. I have full confidence in his abilities to lead this diner with the same dedication and passion that I have dedicated over the years." Mark, fresh from some city business school, couldn't hide the victorious smile forming on his lips. "I'll still be around," Mr. Peters said, placing his hand on his nephew's shoulder with a gesture of trust and affection, to guide and support whenever needed. "But from now on, you'll report to him." His absence from the daily life of the establishment would certainly be felt. However, time brings inevitable changes, and it was time for a new phase in the diner's history. All eyes now turned to Mark, the new manager, hoping he could honor his uncle's legacy. As Mark took over, it became evident that his values differed significantly from his uncle's. The diner had always been a haven where truckers felt welcomed and valued, but Mark saw things more pragmatically. To him, it was all about the flow of customers and efficient service. Sally kept biting her tongue. Sure, the new touchscreen Mark installed looked sleek, but did it make Tom's coffee get to his table any faster? The older drivers who frequented the establishment, stopping not only for fuel and food, but also for friendly conversation, now found themselves receiving impersonal and rushed treatment. For Mark, every minute spent on unnecessary conversation represented lost time, and consequently, lost profits. The warm and familiar environment that had defined the place for so many years gave way to an aura of impersonality and indifference. Many of the older truckers liked to tell Sally about their lives while waiting for refills, venting about long hauls, mechanical woes, or simply seeking a moment of human connection on those lonely roads. Dismissing these customers without a friendly word felt wrong to Sally. She saw in their tired eyes the need for an attentive and compassionate ear. "Sally, I need to talk to you. Come to my office, please," Mark announced, his voice stern and businesslike. As she entered, he was staring at his computer screen, not even acknowledging her presence. Sally, I'll be straightforward, he began without preamble. I've analyzed your numbers, and yours are the worst on the staff. Your service time is significantly longer than others. Even with my guidance to be more efficient, you continue to waste time with pointless conversations with customers. Sally tried to explain, Mark, every customer has a story, but she was cut off. I don't care about their stories, Mark declared, his voice cutting. This is your final warning. If I catch you wasting time listening to the ramblings of these old-timers, you're fired. Sally left that meeting feeling helpless and misunderstood. She had a special reason for listening to those stories. She vividly remembered the years spent with her grandfather, a trucker himself, who had passed away a few years ago. It was a fellow trucker, a stranger just passing through the diner, who gently alerted him about early signs of diabetes. This simple exchange encouraged her grandfather to undergo tests, which detected the disease at an early stage, allowing for effective treatment that significantly improved his quality of life. Now, it was Sally who was in a position to potentially help someone, just as that kind stranger had helped her grandfather. Sally soon faced the ultimate test with the dilemma of following her convictions or obeying Mark's orders. The diner was especially crowded one afternoon when an elderly woman approached, looking worried and flustered. Honey, could you help me get this tire pressure gauge thingy? She asked, fumbling with her purse. I'm a bit confused. My son usually gets this stuff for me, but he's on a long haul this month, and I plumb forgot to tell him my tires were getting low. The diner had a small corner dedicated to automotive spares, necessities for those hasty repairs on the road. As Sally listened, she felt Mark's eyes boring into her, the pressure to be efficient hanging heavy in the air. But the elderly woman's obvious need for help overrode any fear of reprimand. You know, ma'am, I've been a regular here forever, the woman continued. But with my son usually taking care of things, now I can't say I recognize you. Is Mr. Peters still running this place? He and his wife were such good friends of mine. Sadly, Sally explained Mr. Peters' retirement. Mark was getting closer now, and she could see his scowl deepening as she walked the woman over to the automotive section. When they reached the gauges, the woman began frantically rummaging through her purse. Can't seem to find my wallet. Must have left it at home, she said, her voice trembling with worry and embarrassment. Looks like I won't be able to get this today. Sally felt the weight of the situation, knowing the elderly woman likely relied on having her tires properly inflated for a safe journey. I have an idea, she said, a warm smile returning to her face. Don't worry about this today. The gauge is on the house, and I'll make sure one of the guys checks your tires before you leave. The woman's face lit up. Oh, honey, how kind of you. As soon as I see Mr. Peters, I'll tell him what a wonderful employee he has. With a grateful wave, she left the diner, carrying not only the needed tire gauge, but also the memory of a compassionate heart. It didn't take long for Mark to appear, his expression severe. Sally, I warned you. Not only did you take forever with that lady, but you also gave away merchandise. Are we running a charity here? He wasn't interested in explanations. I will deduct the cost of that gauge from your paycheck. Sally started to reply, but it was futile. Pack your things. You're fired, he declared, his voice flat and uncompromising. Sally was stunned, a mix of emotions washing over her. She had followed her heart, helped someone in need, and was now out of a job. Was doing the right thing really worth this? However, the story still held an unexpected twist. Just 30 minutes after her abrupt dismissal, Mr. Peters arrived, looking confused. "Where's Sally?" he asked, searching the diner. Mark, with visible smugness, informed his uncle that he had just fired her. Mr. Peters' weathered face paled as Mark continued explaining how Sally was inefficient and unprofessional. Mr. Peters, a younger waitress, interrupted, looking flustered. "A call just came in on the diner phone. A woman said she was a friend of yours and wanted to speak urgently." Mr. Peters took the phone, his expression shifting from confusion to surprise as he listened. When he hung up, there was no mistaking the disapproval on his face. "That was my wife," he said to Mark, his voice holding a steely edge. "She just got off the phone with that elderly woman you turned away." Apparently, Sally was the picture of kindness, the kind of service that made this diner what it is. "Now, you tell me you just fired her for doing her job right. Seems to me you don't understand the spirit of this place," Mr. Peters said, disappointment heavy in his voice. "Unfortunately, Mark, I think I made a mistake trusting you here." Without hesitation, he picked up the phone again and called the recently dismissed Sally, asking her to come back. When she arrived, a heart-stopping surprise awaited her. "Sally, I am so sorry," Mr. Peters began, sincerity etched on his face. "My nephew, Mark, no longer works here. Now I need someone to replace him. Would you consider managing this diner?" Sally was stunned, tears welling up. She could hardly believe this sudden turn of events. After being treated so unfairly, here she was being offered the chance to run the place she loved so much. With a voice thick with emotion, she replied, "Mr. Peters, I would be honored." Sally's genuine compassion was a breath of fresh air. Her kind gesture towards the elderly woman, though initially costing her job, had ultimately opened a door she never imagined. It was a powerful reminder that even when acts of kindness go unnoticed, the positive impact they have can ripple outward in unexpected ways. Sally understood that running the diner the right way was about more than just efficiency and profit. It was about creating a place where weary travelers could find a hot meal, a listening ear, and a sense of community along the road. It was a legacy she was determined to honor and preserve. In the weeks that followed, the diner began to transform. The touch screens were removed, replaced by the warmth of handwritten menus. Sally took the time to learn truckers' names, their usual orders, and asked about the long journeys they just finished or were about to embark on. Word spread fast along the routes. Things were changing for the better. Old faces began reappearing, joined by newcomers hearing about the diner's return to its roots. Mr. Peters was a fixture once more, not behind a desk, but sitting at the counter, sharing stories from the early days with the truckers. The bulletin board behind the cash register started filling up again with snapshots, notes from fellow travelers seeking help or offering ride shares, and even the odd bit of trucker poetry. Sometimes the old ways are the best ways, and sometimes the greatest profits aren't counted in dollars, but in the miles of kindness that stretch out from a simple act done with a genuine heart.